We're studying good to great, the principles of how that good companies became great companies. And as I read through Jim Collins' book, I was amazed at the biblical principles that they discovered in the Wall Street, the New York Stock Exchange. I was just amazed how that worked. So this is part 4. Part 4 is what they call the Fox and the Hedgehog. The Fox and the Hedgehog. Now, when they're talking about the fox and the hedgehog, here's what they mean. The fox is smart, he's clever, he can do many different things. He's fast, he can jump, he can run. There's just so many things that he can do because of his high intelligence. And then there's the lowly hedgehog. The hedgehog is, the fox is always chasing and trying to eat the hedgehog. The hedgehog can't do many things. He only does one thing, but he does it well. What he does when the fox comes after the hedgehog, he simply rolls up into a little ball. Now, the hedgehog, they're not foolish. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just simply saying they see what is essential and they ignore the rest. That's the way they just go merrily on their journey and let the fox go look for another prey. Because they've learned how to simplify their world into one single organized idea. That is, when the fox comes, they roll into a little ball, and these, kind of like our porcupine, these spines are sticking out, and the fox can't eat him because he's rolled up into this little ball. And so the fox can turn him over and over, but he just continues to keep himself in that little ball, and the fox cannot harm him. Now, that's a good principle, a very good principle. They have organized their life into one single idea. Now, there's a word in our King James Version Bible, the New King James, is translated sober-minded. Sober-minded. Now, that almost sounds like somebody that has not been drinking alcohol, but that's really not what this word means. The word literally means a disciplined mind that is able to reason. Have you ever met people that were unreasonable? I mean, there's no way you're going to get through to them because they're just not reasonable. That's not sober-mindedness. Sober mind is a disciplined mind that is able to reason. That would be a good prayer to pray. God, make me sober-minded. Give me the ability to be able to reason. Now, when I began to study this principle of the fox and the hedgehog, there was a verse of Scripture that immediately jumped out to me. Because as I said, all they were doing is discovering biblical principles. Here's the biblical principle. It's found in the book of Philippians, the 3rd chapter, verse 13. Paul says, "This one thing I do." Boy, that's the verse of Scripture that God used to convict me. My family and I were pastoring a very good church in the state of Ohio, very good church. And I loved it. I loved everything I was doing. I was doing everything I ever dreamed about doing in ministry. We not only had a good church, we had a great missionary program. We had a Bible Institute that we were teaching. Help people could go all the way to a master's degree in theology. I was on television every week. I was on radio every day. I was loving what I was doing, but God showed me I was trying to do two things. I was trying to pastor a very good church, and I was trying to train leaders. This concept of training leaders, of raising up another generation of leaders, spiritual leaders, it just become a consuming passion of mine. And God showed me I'm trying to do two things, and this is the verse He used to convict me. Now I ask you the question, what is the one thing you do? Now I'm not saying you can't do other things, but those things must feed into the one thing. And it's the reason why I used to play the guitar And I put my guitar under the bed. Not because I didn't enjoy playing the guitar, not because I didn't enjoy helping lead worship, but I realized one day I'm never going to be a great worship leader, but I can become a great teacher. This one thing I do. Boy, God used it to convict me, and it brought me to the place where the biggest struggle I ever struggled was resigning the church in Ohio. Because I loved it, I loved every minute of it. But I realized I was trying to do two things. You're never going to reach greatness being double-minded. It's not going to happen, friend. The Bible warns us about that. And so you've got to learn how to focus. A disciplined mind that is able to reason. Now, just because we're doing something doesn't necessarily mean we should continue doing that. And that's where so many companies get in trouble. It's where so many churches get in trouble. One of the big things that's happening in the church world in the United States right now, and I think you're going to continue to see this. I was listening to some wise men debate this not too long ago. And they were talking about how that back in the 70s and 80s, churches began to experience massive growth and became mega churches, large churches. And every church wanted its not only auditorium, but its school. Not only its school, but also its gymnasium. And they want all of these different things. Now that churches are declining in membership, suddenly they've got big buildings they can't fill. They've got gymnasiums with no young people in them. And they're struggling to pay the bills. And as they discussed this is what they were saying. Churches that are going to be successful in the future are churches that are going to learn how to network with other churches. Not everybody has to have a school, but you need a school in your community, and you should feed into that. Not every church needs a gymnasium, but you need gymnasiums where the young people can go, so you need churches that you are working together. I totally agree with that. I believe that is wisdom for our future. And just because we're doing something doesn't mean we're doing it well. If we're not doing it well, maybe we would be better off to hand that off to someone else. Now, this verse of Scripture where Paul said, this one thing I do. Now, if you're 20 years old, don't worry about it. But if you're 40 years old and you don't know the one thing, you're already in trouble. Because your life is half over and you still don't know what you're doing. So God help us to learn how to focus. This one thing I do. There's three main principles that are mentioned here. First of all, Paul says, I do not count myself to have apprehended. Now, what's he mean by that? I do not count myself to have apprehended. He just simply saying, I haven't arrived yet. Now, the problem for too many people is they think they've already arrived. They think their best years are behind them. Listen to me, friend. There are no accidents with God. If you are here, if you are breathing, then God has purpose for your life. Now, I understand they talk about the golden years, and one brother said the problem with that gold is it can tarnish. And that's true, but you don't have to let it tarnish. You can make the last years of your life the best years of your life. They can become the greatest years, not because you're doing the same thing. No, you have to reinvent yourself, learn to do it in a different way. Now, this is what Paul is talking about. Too many people think they've already arrived and the best is already behind them. You're in trouble with those kind of thoughts. The second thing he said, forgetting those things which are behind. Wow, what a powerful statement. The problem for too many people is they're allowing their past to control their future. That's a mistake. Don't allow your past to define you. Learn from your past, but continue staying focused for the future. And that's the third statement that Paul makes. He says, reaching forward to those things which are ahead. My, that is excellent leadership. No wonder Paul was able to accomplish the things that he did. I mean, they arrest him, put him in jail. He turns it into the most fruitful years of his ministry by writing letters that we're still reading today. He's influencing generation after generation into the future. His greatest ministry has occurred after his death. Reaching forward to those things which are ahead. Now, a leader without a forward vision is a leader without a future. And I've seen people like this. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to get on that bus because they're not going anywhere that I want to go. All they do is talk about the good old days. All they do is, that's the only time they get emotional is when they start talking about the past. God help us not to let our dreams die. Now, the leader that's got to combine these three thoughts. I do not count myself to have apprehended. I forget the things that are behind. I reach forward. The leader that's able to do that is the leader that is what Paul uses this word, I press toward the mark. That word press, that's a disciplined word. That's a word that means I'm bringing everything into focus here. And I love the picture that Carrie has chosen for this when she chose the runners that are in full stance, are already moving toward the finish line, even though they're just beginning the race. And they're all leaning forward with their neck thrust forward. Boy, that's what the word expectation's all about. It means somebody with their neck stretched forward. That's the way we ought to be approaching life. And leaders that learn to do this, that's the way they approach it. Paul said, I press toward the mark of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. God help us to do that. I can remember the story they told about the young preacher that had been so influenced by the old gentleman, the old man of God. He heard he was dying, and so he went to see the old preacher. He said he's lying there in the bed with a halo of hair around him, and he said, I looked at him and he said, oh, your life has blessed me so much. Please, I may never see you again, but please tell me, what is the greatest spiritual experience in your life? The old gentleman looks back from his deathbed and smiles and said, it hadn't happened yet, son. Boy, I love that. I love that kind of attitude. That's pressing toward the mark, the prize of the high calling. Now, this is what Paul calls this one thing I do. Jim Collins calls it the Fox and the Hedgehog. Call it whatever you want to call it, but it simply means reducing your life down. What is the one thing that God has called you to do? This should become your frame of reference for every decision that you make in life. Every decision. Learn to take it through these concepts of forgetting the things that are behind and pressing toward the mark. Now, there's three circles that they talk about in their book, three circles that I think we need to discuss. The circle of passion, the circle of expertise. What are you competent? What is your gifting? What can you do really well? And then the circle of finances. Three circles. And it's where those three circles come together. They overlap. It's where they overlap, that's where your this one thing I do concept is born. That's where you're going to discover it. Your passion is important. Your expertise is important. The finances, resources are important. But it's where they overlap. That's where you're going to find the one thing I do, the Hedgehog Principle. Let me discuss it. In developing this, you've got to develop each one of these areas of your life. To fully develop the Hedgehog Principle concept, you need all three circles. What is it that you are deeply passionate about? What is it that gets your heart beating? What is it that emotionally excites you? Teaching is my gift. Is my gift. You let me start teaching, and it just motivates me. It motivates me. I become passionate about it because that is my gifting. What is it that you are passionate about? Now, the truth is, you cannot manufacture passion. You can't do it. All you can do is discover it. Discover what is it that ignites passion within me? What is it that causes me to get up earlier? What is it that I wake up before my alarm clock goes off? What is it that does that to you? Find out what you're passionate about. The second concept, and that's what you should focus on. Focus on that, what they call the fire that burns within you, the things about which you are passionate. So then the second concept is the concept of what is our expertise? I love the picture that she has chosen here of the artist that is painting the portrait. That is a great gift. That is a great gift. He is taking a piece of canvas, a piece of paper, and he's turning it into, it looks like a picture of this woman, painting the eyes. And the eyes are, is what artists tell me, is one of the most difficult things to paint. He's painting where it looks lifelike. Obvious, he is gifted. He can do this and do it very well. Now, I need to caution you here. We're not talking about here a goal to be the best. We're not talking about a strategy to be the best. We're not talking about an intention to be the best or a plan to be the best. No. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about discovering the gifts that you have that God has placed within you. Come to that understanding of what we can do better than anybody else can. Anyone else around. Now, if you discover that, that's where you're going to become successful. And as I said, when God challenged me and I began to devote my life to just study and to teaching methods and communication and how that I could become an effective communicator, that's where I began to focus on this one thing I do. It took me to another level of teaching. Now, this is what we're talking about. It's understanding what is the gift that God has given me that I can do that better than anybody around me. That's not pride. It's simply understanding. What is the gift? What is my passion? If I link those up, then that is going to drive my economic engine. What is it that drives our economic engine? Because the truth is, finances are always a factor. As one comic said, if money talks, all it ever told me was goodbye. That's the way some people are, you know. But the truth is, finances are always a factor in life. You fill up your car with gasoline, they're not going to ask for 3 smiles and a kiss. No, they want $10. You know, it's a medium of exchange. It's true in our lives, in our ministry. But finances flow best when we are doing the things that we are gifted to do, that we are passionate about. It's what we say, money follows ministry. Now, it's one of the things that has shocked me in my life is that people pay me to do this. I mean, I'm having a blast. I am enjoying life. I come fully alive when I am teaching. And yet, people pay me to do what I love, what I'm passionate about. And it's not just in the United States. I go to other countries and people start coming up and giving me money. Why are they doing that? I'm not asking them for money. No. It's because I'm doing what God called me to do, what I'm gifted to do, what I have focused upon. And because of that, the finances flow. They flow. Finance is always, it's a part of our life. We have to deal with it. But if we will focus on that area where God has gifted us and we are passionate, that's where we're going to find our greatest success. Now, let me talk about developing a three-circle council. And developing a three-circle council about being passionate, about your competence, your expertise, and about your resources. Get 5 to 10 people. Don't make it a small group. Don't get a large group, a small group. 5 to 10 excellent people, the best that you can get. Get a variety of skills. One of the problems is we get people that's so much like us. Get people that are different than you. Different genders, different races, different economic stratas, different, the greater the differences. I'm talking about good people, because there's a lot of good people. They may not have money, but they're smart, and they've got some intelligence. They may not have a great education, but they're wise. They have learned things as they've gone through life. So get the best people that you can with a good variety of skills. If you can, include some key leaders in that, because leaders think different and they're able to challenge us to think different. And then plan on having 4 or 5 different strategy sessions. Don't just do them back to back. It's better if you put a little bit of time between them. Take a week off or 2 weeks or whatever, then bring them back together and do another strategy session. What you want to do is learn this group of people to ask questions guided by the 3 circles: your passion, your expertise, and your resources. Ask good questions guided by the 3 circles. Then engage in the dialogue and debate. This is where you begin hashing it back and forth. The pros and cons, what is good and what's bad, where's the strength, where's the weakness. This is where you debate about it, again, guided by the 3 circles. And then the third thing is begin to make executive decisions guided by the 3 circles. Now, I mentioned, I didn't understand the concept of bringing a strategy team together, a leadership team to help you work through this. But this is exactly what I was forced to do when God confronted me with that verse, this one thing I do. And it brought me to the point that I was forced to make a decision. I had a good job. I had the best job, in my opinion, being a pastor of a very good church of hundreds of people, and yet I felt challenged. Are you going to live for your security? You're going to live for what you have already accomplished? Or are you going to follow your heart, follow your dream? I'm glad I chose to follow my heart, because, as they say, the rest is history. And now, at that time, I was pastoring about 1,000 people. Now I pastor thousands of pastors that look to me as pastor. I'm so glad I made an executive decision, this one thing I do. So you had to choose yes and no. And then do the autopsies, the analysis, guided by the 3 circles. Again, don't blame anybody. It's nobody's fault in particular. We're all learners. We're all students. We're going through life together. But guided by these 3 circles, you start cutting out certain things. Because, see, this is what you're going to have to do if you're going to accomplish excellence. You can never accomplish excellence by doing many things. Probably the greatest basketball player that ever lived was Michael Jordan. He was the best. And I've never seen anybody could play with the intensity. Nobody that would practice like he did. Nobody that had the passion that he had for the game. And the things he could do was just absolutely amazing. But then he went through a crisis situation in his life where his father was murdered, and it just really threw him into a very tumultuous time in his life where he was so confused. So he tried baseball. He was a good player, but he was not a great player. Why? Even Michael Jordan couldn't be great at two things. This one thing I do. Now, when we come to this concept and we're able to reduce our life down to what is it that God has called me? What is it that He's gifted me to do? What is it that I should be focusing on for the future? This develops what they call a severe standard of excellence. A severe standard of excellence. It's not talking about people that, they're exclusive, pushing everybody out. No, it's talking about people that they are the best of the best. They are the gold winners. They're the people that stand on the rostrum that they have achieved what they set out to do. Now, I believe God has called every one of us, gifted every one of us to certain areas of life. Every one of us. I do not believe that God has made any mistakes with any of our lives. No, not at all. Not at all. You're never going to say, God say, oops. God never makes a mistake. He gave you the gifts that you have. He put you in the place that He put you. He put you in the family He put you in, the culture He put you in. Why? Because He had something in mind for you. Now, it is your responsibility to discipline your thoughts, your mind, and discover what is the thing that God has called me to do, and focus on that. If you do, you're going to find more fulfillment in life than you would any other place. And so I challenge you, develop what they call the disciplined thoughts. And if you'll do it, you too can arise to your level of excellence and become the best at whatever it is that you do. God will use your life that impacts all the people that are around you. May God bless you on your Christian journey, and may we learn this principle of the hedgehog. This one thing I do.